I'm Stephen Maguire. I'm Dean of the University of Sussex Business School, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the British Academy of Management Conference held here. So welcome. Thank you for coming. I hope your journeys were relatively trouble-free. And I'd also want to thank the organizers who worked both at BAM and then in my school, who worked extremely hard to make this event as enjoyable and as informative as possible. The University of Sussex campus is relatively unusual, not unique, but unusual as by being the vision of one individual, Sir Basil Spence, created this entire campus in the late 1950s, early 1960s. The campus isn't showing at its best, and I just thought I would owe you a bit of an explanation as to why you're having to walk across some construction sites. We are doing a major redevelopment of our student accommodation at what we call the West Slope, which is basically behind this building. And as you may have noticed from the newspapers, something called aerated concrete, reinforced aerated concrete. I missed the second A. We have it as well. All of you who have 1960s buildings are in for the treat that we've experienced over the past year. And I'm afraid the schedule of works for rectifying that are what they are. So I hope you are not terribly disrupted, but I am sorry you're not seeing the campus, particularly in this weather, in all its glory. The school itself is a relatively young school, and that's why this meeting is important to us. We've hosted the Royal Economic Society meeting a couple of years.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Mariana Marra, the co-chair with Vicky Bamiatzi of this year conference. We are extremely proud of having organized this terrific event. And I just want to use these minutes of my time to highlight that this event was possible because it was a collective effort for which I truly want to thank. First and for all, Aristea Marcantoni and her team of the Sussex Communication. The BAM team, I will just mention Justina and Lewis. Everyone who has worked with BAM knows them. Yeah, they really deserve this. My colleagues at the University of Sussex who participated in the conference committee, I cannot mention them all, but they have been working around the clock over 1 year time to organize today's panel and all the others that you will enjoy tomorrow and the one that you have, I'm sure, appreciated on Friday afternoon in the virtual talk. And last but not least, Steve Maguire, our dean, who has provided us with all the support that we wanted. So, we really can't say thank you enough for everything that you have provided us with. So on behalf of myself and Vicky Bamiatzi, I wish you a fantastic conference, and I'm sure you will enjoy your time here. Yeah. Okay. I will now hand over to Katie Mason.
Hello, everybody, and a really warm welcome to our conference here at the wonderful campus. It's been really wonderful to see the number of registrations that we've had for this conference. We are such a fantastic community, and we're so strong when we're working together, especially when we're working towards our key theme for sustainable futures. I'm going to be presenting today with our new chair, Emma Parry. This is her first conference as chair, and it's fantastic to have her in this role. So we have over 1,000 delegates for this conference. We had an online day on Friday, which was absolutely fantastic. We had our doctoral symposium headed by Graham Curry yesterday, and that was also a fantastic day. We've got people here from over 50 countries. We're running over 300 events. We've had over 900 papers scheduled. So get ready, fasten your seatbelts. All that remains for me to say really is a huge welcome to you all, a fantastic thank you to the University of Sussex, a big hug to our sister learned societies in management. So from the Irish Academy, we've got people here, we've got people from CIMA, from ANZAM and from ATHEDE. And ATHEDE, it's the first time you're joining us, so a hearty warm welcome to you, and also the Chartered Association of Business Schools. So really fantastic to see you all here. Thank you. I'm going to hand over to Emma now to talk a little bit about the priorities and what we're thinking about in BAM.
Thank you, Katie. Just before I do that, I'm just going to say, add my thanks, my welcome, first of all, welcome everyone. But I'm also going to add my thank you to the two conference chairs before I forget to do this. So we'll do one each. Yes. So I'm just going to run across the room here, a bit like Annika Rice, if anyone used to watch that programme, to say thank you very much.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much.
Right, anyone that knows me will know that that's the most exercise I've done for a few days. So, okay, I'm just going to say a very little bit about the British Academy of Management and what we're about. I'm sure it will be very obvious by the time we get to the end of this conference. So BAM has a number of ongoing priorities that should not be news to anyone. We're all about promoting excellence in research, education and scholarship. We do that through the conference, we do it through our journals, through our grant schemes, and so on and so forth. We're also about supporting people, supporting academics and supporting business schools, and helping academics to develop their careers, regardless of what career stage they're at. So if you were around yesterday at the doctoral symposium, you will have seen some of that play out in practice in relation to people that are in the early stages of their academic career. And the other thing that we do on an ongoing basis that I think we'd like to do more of is around advocacy and consultation and policy work, and seeing what we can do to put us as business school academics and business schools in the best position that we can. Just a couple of things very quickly of what's new in that. Any of you that were around on Friday at the virtual day will know that we've just launched our Management Knowledge and Education section of BJM. So a big thank you to Paul and the editorial team for that. It's great to see that finally off the ground. We are relaunching, if you like, our SAMS BAM grant scheme. So do look out for more details of that. And we've also got a recently new program for people that we're calling the program for leaders of engagement, but really anyone, whether you are academic faculty or whether you're professional staff that's involved in engagement within business schools, this program is for you. So a couple of headlines there. And I'm not going to go through these because I'm aware of how tight time is, but I do just want to put these up on the screen here, because what we've been doing in the BAM executive for the last few months is really thinking about what we want to do over the next 4 years. And what we've tried to do here with our 5 strategic priorities is think about what are the things that business schools and business school academics are facing in relation to challenges or opportunities at the moment, where we might devote some of our energy, as well as all the normal stuff that we do around research and scholarship and career development, to help you and to help your business schools address these. So you'll be hearing lots more about those over the next few months as we get into 2024 and we start launching some activities around those. And then just to say to me, because I can't stand here and talk about everything that we do come and find out more about us. We have a BAM activity table in the exhibition state, so in the marquee. We have a virtual stand as well, and of course we have our website. So do come and find out more about us. Come and talk to Katie or myself or Madeline or any of the team. We're always happy to talk about what we're doing and tell us, you know, ask us questions and tell us what you think we could be doing in the future. Now I'm going to pass on to Lynn, who is just to tell we're always thinking ahead. Lynn is going to tell us a little bit about next year's conference.
Thank you, Emma. So my name's Lynn Oxborough, and I'm a professor at Nottingham Business School, and I'm going to be co-chair for BAM 2024 with my esteemed colleague, Professor Helen Shipton, who I know that many of you will know. That's a big clue that BAM 2024 welcomes you to Nottingham, specifically to visit Nottingham Trent University. We're one of the biggest universities in the UK by student numbers, and we will welcome you to Nottingham Business School, which is one of the highly accredited, acclaimed business schools for business. So you can see some of our facilities there. We'll be covering a theme of achieving transformation, looking at societal, organizational, personal barriers and challenges. And we'll be exploring that, looking at some of our focus on having a positive impact on people, society, and business. And of course, you can reflect on that at your gala dinner in the amazing environment of St Mary's Church in Nottingham's historic lace market. And it really does look that good. So some of our sub-themes will touch on things that are really important to BAM and really important to us in Nottingham. Transformational leadership. We are, of course, the home of Robin Hood and Brian Clough, but transformation has moved on. Digital transformation. NTU has helped to make Nottingham a city for esports and lots of other activities and innovations going on. We're very, very hot on policy and governance, looking at our responsible and sustainable business interests and transformation and entrepreneurship. And to help you to keep occupied in between, Nottingham, of course, is a historic city. We have the UK's oldest pub. I know that's a bit controversial, but we think it is. We are the home of Robin Hood. You might even get to meet him. So hopefully we'll see some of you in Nottingham next year. Meanwhile, have a fantastic time this week, because that's really important, so that you come back next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Lynn. And I'm just going to pass over to Vicky, but before I do that, I just want to say to everyone, have a fantastic conference. Vicky. Thank you.
So, welcome everybody, welcome from me as well. It's such a pleasure to be with you. And please, for those of you who are there at the back, come forward, because there are many still seats. You can enjoy the plenary. But obviously, knowing the time and with no further ado, what I would like to do is to effectively introduce and open today's panel. Now, it is with great privilege and honor that I welcome our keynote speakers for today, two eminent scholars, both renowned for their work and contribution to the management field. While neither of them needs any introduction, I'm sure, I will take a little bit of time to introduce each one of them for those who perhaps don't know the majority of it. So I will start with our first keynote speaker, which is Professor David Teece. David currently serves as the Thomas W. Tusser Professor in Global Business at Berkeley's Haas School of Business at the University of California. He's a renowned economist, an authority on matters of corporate strategy, innovation, and competition. And, as you probably well know, the architect of the Dynamic Capabilities Framework. His 1997 seminal paper on dynamic capabilities and strategic management, with more than 50,000 citations, is in fact one of the most cited papers in economics and business globally. His groundbreaking work has redefined how we understand the ability of organizations to adapt, innovate, and compete in a rapidly changing environment. With over 30 books and more than 200 scholarly papers and almost 200,000 citations, his insights have not only shaped academic thought, but have also guided business leaders and policymakers around the world. Our second keynote speaker is Professor Richard Whittington. Richard He is a professor of strategic management at Said Business School at the University of Oxford. He has dedicated his career to exploring and understanding the practical application of strategies within organizations. His strategy as practice approach has bridged the gap between theory and the real-world dynamics of strategic management. With numerous books, articles, and research projects, Richard has been a pioneer in analyzing how strategies are formed, implemented, and lived on a daily basis within organizations, as well as how strategies are being shared inside and outside the organization. His contributions have not only been recognized by his academic peers, but also found resonance in various industries, aiding businesses in the pursuit of strategic excellence. So today, we are fortunate to have both of them here with us to share their wisdom and insights and enlighten us on how we can build a sustainable future by delving into the intertwined role of firms, government, and society. A discussion that we actually started very fruitfully on Friday in our virtual session with Anita Magahan and Timon Basal, which I actually call all of you to jointly watch it as well. So with no further ado, you have already heard a lot from me. I would like to have you join me for extend a warm welcome to both of you, to both of Richard and David, and welcome David on the pod so he can start effectively the opening plenary. So. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm delighted to be here and to present you with what I hope is a provocative title, How to Revitalize Britain Through Dynamic Capabilities. Now, I know this is the British Academy of Management, and I know many of you may be from abroad, but I think the model and the issues that I raise are relevant beyond Britain, but they're certainly relevant to Britain. And I'm pleased to have this opportunity because I've thought a lot about these issues over the years. And in fact, my early research on profiting from innovation was sort of triggered by looking at how come Britain can be so great at pioneering and so lousy at managing and bringing to market the world's leading technologies. So talk a little bit about British history, very briefly, and Richard obviously can build on that, being a historian. I'll talk about dynamic capabilities in British management and the new imperatives that I see. My goal here is basically to be provocative and to employ concepts from strategic management, not only with respect to thinking about what managers need to do, but what policymakers need to do. And that's not been much of a tradition in the field of strategic management. We're mainly looking at how public policy and government policy affects business, but in fact, business affects government too, and affects outcomes and can shape policy, and policy needs to be shaped with both in mind. And I'll also look at the post-Brexit opportunity. Apparently Britain's not going back anytime soon, so we might as well live with the environment that Britain is in and think about the British dream. If there is one. Apparently there isn't one yet, but if Xi Jinping can have one, why can't Britain have one? What might that look like? And can dynamic capabilities give some insight into what that might be? Management obviously matters to a nation. I don't think any of you in the British Academy of Management dispute that. But when you look at the way policy is formulated, it's usually left out because my field, which is economics, doesn't really have a role for managers or entrepreneurs for that matter. So there's a little bit of a bias in the policymaking process that we need to overcome. We also need to understand that laws and institutions matter not just for the economy, but they also matter for what managers do. They shape managerial behavior. And so it's important that government come up with good rules and the right rules to make entrepreneurial activity productive. Britain's conundrum today, as I see it, is that Britain is great at actually starting companies. There is a lot of new enterprise development in Britain. What's missing is globally scalable big businesses. And in the tech sector, you look at the entirety of Europe, it's lacking big scalable companies. China, the United States do have big scalable companies. What's the difference? Does management have a role here? Is it just all about policy? So here are some quotes from you. Some quotes from John Bell here. He says, look, you can add up all the companies in Oxford, Cambridge, and London. You might almost equal Boston in number, but in terms of market cap, it's only a fraction. So great at creating small companies, terrible at scaling them. So he goes on, or Gordon Sanghera here goes on to say, what's wrong with the UK model is that companies tend to sell out too soon and they don't have the gumption or the enterprise or the resources, maybe financial resources, to go further. So what could we do? What's the nature of that problem? Is there anything we can say about it? Well, let's dig into British history. Institutions matter, history matters, management matters too, but so does history. And if you look hard at the Industrial Revolution, you know, we're all taught about the great inventors. No one ever tells you about the fact that it was really the putting together of inventions with the management and scaling of industrial enterprises that made the Industrial Revolution. Joe Morker, a very famous historian, says a successful entrepreneur in the Industrial Revolution had the ability to identify a need or an opportunity and then cooperate with others who possessed different comparative advantages. So it was a marrying together of management and invention alone won't build you a great enterprise or a great industry or a great nation. And so behind it all is this framework, what I'm going to try and use to illustrate and to amplify these themes is dynamic capabilities. Now, I'm assuming most of you have some familiarity with it, so I'll just briefly mention that there's two general classes of capabilities. Ordinary capabilities, which is about doing things better and more efficiently. Britain isn't going to become great again by just doing the same things better. So you have to be able to do new things. And that's what I call dynamic capabilities. And figuring out what the next big thing is and writing it and scaling upon it is how you build great companies. It's how you build a strong, powerful economy. In the middle, I have a new category I'm not mentioning much today called superordinary. So you can actually maybe improve the ordinary and be a little bit above best practice. You can be the leaders in coming up with new best practices. That'll get you a little bit further, but it won't get you to the same place that dynamic capabilities will get you. So it's about making big bets in the right places and scaling it. That's what you need to be teaching your students. That's what boards of directors need to be encouraging management to do. That's what public policy needs to do if Britain is going to be great again. Now, the Victorian era brought about changes that disfavored the individual entrepreneur. So Britain started off in the Industrial Revolution being very entrepreneurial. And then the historians tell us, and I think there's some truth to this, is that in the Victorian era, the nature of innovation changed. It went more to what I call systemic innovation, or architectural innovations, to use the language of Rebecca Henderson and Kim Clark. And that required coordination. The role of the individual entrepreneur, less important, but it required coordination across industries and across sectors. So systemic innovation kind of if you will, clip the wings of the individual entrepreneur. And also, over time, the basic moral compass and the set of the moral codes that drove and set the rules for governance of British society got a little bit eroded. When you look at the early Industrial Revolution, yes, Britain always had the rule of law, but the courts were awfully clunky. No one went to court to get contracts enforced. I mean, that was very rare. There were certain moral codes, and you go back to Adam Smith's theory of the moral sentiments. This is what he expresses, and I think these moral codes have corroded, and so we rely a lot more on the courts than we used to. But the character and norms of British industry have changed over time as well. And then what happened in the 20th century? Everyone talks and the historians write a lot about the fact that, maybe Britain benefited from colonialization. But when you look at innovation and entrepreneurship, there was actually a great loss of entrepreneurship out of Britain because the opportunities were in the colonies. So the colonies were a big vacuum cleaner that sucked out a lot of the entrepreneurial capabilities, and often they didn't come back. And by the way, I'm going very fast through these slides. I'm making them available. There's obviously way too much in these slides, and there's way too many of these slides, but they're all going to be available to you, and I'll just hit the headlines. And as I mentioned earlier, when I started studying the whole question of why do pioneers in innovation, why do the pioneers so often get shortchanged? You know, there were a number of British examples that shaped my thinking and led me to this view that complementary assets were critical. Pilkington with float glass did a reasonable job being an innovator and winning, but you know what? They really didn't build much outside of Britain. The technology was sufficiently strong, it could have completely obliterated the entire American and European continental glass industry, but they chose to license because they were gentle competitors rather than ferocious competitors. EMI with the CAT scanner, of course, is a classic case, the greatest invention in radiology for 50 years, and Britain invented it. Sir Godfrey Hounsfield wins the Nobel Prize, but no follow-on industry development in Britain from that tremendous invention. So just being good at science, just being good at invention won't get you to the productivity growth and the wealth creation. You have to have a lot more. You need complementary assets and you need managers who can manage. And then, of course, modern financialization has tended, in my view, to be a little bit of a distraction. It's too easy relative, well, let me put it differently. As I've said earlier, the rules of the game, government sets the rules of the game. And actually, it was William Baumol, the famous American economist who's sadly passed away, who pointed out there can be unproductive as well as productive entrepreneurship. Unproductive entrepreneurship is when you're not really creating value, you're just playing regulatory arbitrage. The classic case, of course, when America at one point in the 70s had old oil and new oil, two different categories of oil, if someone can figure out how to legally arbitrage the two, you can get very wealthy. A guy called Mark Rich did. He then went to, he was a criminal basically, but that's unproductive entrepreneurship. And many forms of trading are unproductive. And quite frankly, a lot of stuff that's done in New York and London that creates financial wealth, there's more wealth appropriated than there is created. And as my friend Bill Lazonic points out, capital markets are not really a place anymore to raise capital. It's a place to extract capital out of companies. He's done a lot of work that shows that more money is taken out of companies on New York Stock Exchange and is actually invested in them through new capital raises. So financialization of the global economy to some extent has tilted the incentives away from where they need to be. So what's required to reboot the British entrepreneurial and innovation ecosystem? Well, it's not entirely clear. But in my view, it means that we got to find out how to strengthen dynamic capabilities. And the opportunity obviously requires skills. I mean, I don't want to, in stressing the importance of managerial capabilities, you need to have a skilled labor force underneath. And without that infrastructure, there's not a lot you can do. But if you have that infrastructure and you can build on top of it, then you have a chance to improve. So let's think about what this means in terms of British management. We must recognize that not just British firms, but I suppose all firms today, but particularly British firms are facing not only a change in the nature of globalization, not only war in Ukraine, not only export controls and all things of that kind, but also a post-Brexit world. There's probably no period in English history since that's been more disruptive than the Second World War itself. So we have to manage under deep uncertainty. You know, it used to be that black swans were occasional. Now black swans are every day or every week. So how do you find your way through this quagmire of deep uncertainty? Well, whether you like it or not, you need a theory or you need a framework. Otherwise, it's just going to look incredibly complex and incredibly difficult. And I have a quote here from Kurt Lewin: "There's nothing more practical than a good theory." That sounds like a contradiction, but it's not, because what is a good theory? A good theory is something that simplifies reality. It doesn't mimic reality, but it is a good reflection of reality. And if we can create good theories and good frameworks, and that's what we do or should be doing in our scholarship, then we can provide assistance to decision makers. And I've adapted here a diagram that actually George Akerlof, who's a Nobel laureate economist from Berkeley, published this. I think it was in the Journal of Economic Literature, called "Sins of Omissions in the Practice of Hardness." And he basically made the point that you know, there's always this rigor relevance trade-off in doing social science research. And the, you know, the more formal, the press for rigor, and this is more true of economics and management, and this creates the opportunity for management. The press for rigor in economics and formalization is mean that a lot of work done by economists is irrelevant. On the other hand, a lot of highly relevant work that's not theory-based or grounded in theory is not good either. And what really, you need to be somewhere in the middle on that frontier. Where you don't want to be is down where bad theory is, where it's neither relevant nor rigorous. And I would say somewhat, I don't want to sound arrogant about this, but probably 90% of what's published in the academic journals falls into that bad theory, or it's in the wrong place on the rigor relevance trade-off. But that's okay, because you sometimes have to make a stab as you try to move towards the frontier. So as part of a learning process, it's okay to have a first start on something and then improve, but you've got to be out there on that frontier and having a nice balance between rigor and relevance. But this is where management, I think, is high on the relevance side, and if it can create some simple frameworks and theories that are tractable, then it can contribute a lot to management decision-making as well as to public policy. And I want to point out that British intellectuals have actually been very important in the development of what I call systems thinking. Given the complexities that we're facing today, we really need to, I'll use the word, bring back systems thinking. If you go back into the history of the field of management science, in the early days, everyone thought management science was going to be systems theory. And there were guys like C. West Churchman at Berkeley and many others that were pushing that perspective. But because they couldn't make it tractable, because it wasn't very relevant, just simply saying that everything connects and relates to everything else, which is what a system is all about, isn't very helpful for people that have to make decisions now. So we need to bring it back. And in fact, what I would like to say is that you can build on the work of Kenneth Boulding. You can build on the work of Peter Checkland, who I think was at Liverpool. And there are quite a number of systems thinkers around. Interestingly, they're often in engineering schools. Engineering schools where systems thinking has survived. In economics, it's gone because of this press towards formalization and the desire to bring, quote, rigor. It's very hard to do systems theory and systems thinking in a, quote, rigorous way. I think you can do it in a disciplined way, which is good enough. But my hope and my suggestion here is that we will find ways to bring systems thinking back in. And I will present to you that the notion that dynamic capabilities is actually a workable systems theory. It integrates marketing, it integrates strategy, it integrates operations research, it integrates behavioral economics, it integrates intellectual property, it integrates many of the key disciplines that are necessary to understand how to manage small or large organizations. And so this is where I've developed this schema of ordinary capabilities, superordinary capabilities, and dynamic capabilities. So just to make this a little more succinct, ordinary capabilities are about doing things correctly. And a lot of the books in economics and operations management are about that. It's about efficiency. super ordinary about doing them better, you know, beyond best practice, Kaizen, all of that kind of stuff. But it's not changing the fundamental task. It's just trying to do known tasks better. But dynamic capabilities is figuring out, well, what are the right tasks to do? What are the right products to produce? What are the right services to provide? What's the right business model? So many of the things in management are about dynamic capabilities, even if they don't have that label on them. And so I put forward dynamic capabilities as that organizing framework that can help us all think this through. I'll take a simple example where it could impact. How much time do I have left? 2 minutes. Oh, well, I won't be able to say anything about that one. But here's some quotes from leading execs to sort of bring this home. I'll start at the bottom. This is Tim Cook, the early Tim Cook, in a very obscure comment in the Taipei Times, where he says, Apple has the ability to innovate and create magic. That isn't something you can write a check for. That is something you build over decades. And magic, what he's really talking about is dynamic capabilities. He's talking about organizational capabilities, stuff that you can't have a consultant come in and teach you how to do, stuff you can't read in a textbook, and so forth. And then you got Bezos saying there are decisions that can be made by analysis. Unfortunately, there's a whole other set of decisions you can't ultimately boil down to a math problem. And that's what dynamic capabilities is about. It's just management under deep uncertainty and figuring out which are the next big bets to make. Oops, I'm frozen here. Did I do something wrong? I know that was a trick to tell me I was out of time, or no, it still remains frozen. Okay, let me just use this as I go forward. I won't go into these elements, but I will end with a few comments, and that is around transformation, the sensing, seizing, transforming, because this is what Britain needs to do now. This is what British organizations need to do. That's what organizations everywhere need to be better at. And that requires, you know, the ability to sense the need for change and then effectuate it. And this is where management's critically important. If management can't figure out what they need to do and where they need to put their resources for the future, you're not going to have a company that lasts, and you're not going to have a company that's sustainable. And let me just move to some of the sustainable issues, because I did actually tie this back to green dynamic capabilities. At the end of the day, when we're talking about environmental sustainability, it's not about we're not going to get to environmental sustainability by doing things more efficiently. You know, we have to think new in different ways. And that's what I call green dynamic capabilities. We've got to orchestrate both internal and external capabilities to bring us to where the future is going to be. And let me just end with a story about a little company that I'm closely associated with called Zelos. Wind and solar, and think about this from a management point of view. Managers are thinking and being told all the time, we've got to invest in wind and solar, but there's something missing. Until we have energy storage that's low cost, wind and solar doesn't do as much good at all. So the solution, the most important thing to bring a complementary asset, if you will, or a complementary system to wind and solar is low-cost energy storage. And you won't believe this, but utilities are actually using lithium ion, which is toxic, uses rare earth metals, completely ungreen. Anything that uses lithium ion as a battery is not a proper solution. So you need breakthrough technologies, and we've found one, zinc manganese, both inexpensive materials, and at the end of life, you can actually grind this stuff up and put it on the field as fertilizer. So the trick is to get the recharge rate up or the cycle life up. People had used zinc manganese batteries, been around for 100 years, but no one could get them to more than 3 or 4 charges and discharges. Well, we have it over 1,000, and this is absolute breakthrough. I think this is this world's silver bullet battery, and this is what I do on this side, trying to enact in real time dynamic capabilities using the feeble resources at my disposal. So point here is that this is what you've got to be. It's not about, you know, you have to figure out where the puck is going to be. The puck is going to be towards a society that demands and requires green technology. Well, that's what managers have to think about. That's what you got to do in the R&D department. That's what you got to do in public policy to get to where we need to be. So I'll just pause at this point and hope that in the discussion and with Richard's talk that we can come back to some of these themes. And as I said, the slides will be made available to you.
So you said, David, that it will be provocative, and indeed it was really provocative. But what I would like to obviously ask Richard as a response, you know, we talked about managers, we talked about how building these super ordinary capabilities can change Britain. But what about stakeholders, and what about the government, the society? And I think Richard, with his strategy in practice work, you have a clear view of the stickiness of embedding business and societal practice. So I will give the floor to you.
Thank you very much, Vicky.
Enlighten us on that.
And thank you very much, David, for giving me a good platform. Guys, everybody, the air is cooler down here. There are seats. If you want to hang around, by all means, do come to the VIP seats there, which are, there's some empty spaces there. Please do. So what I want to talk about is possibly a slightly less optimistic view than David's, who talks about the ability of companies to develop dynamic capabilities and potentially transform themselves and the countries in which they live. Very important, not just economically, but for creating a sustainable society in which all stakeholders can participate and flourish. Absolutely. Let me give you the other side of the coin, the more pessimistic one. It's going to be hard and slow. And what I want to do with, I'm taking a practice theory view on, let's face it, undynamic practices which exist in our society and the incapabilities of British society and many other societies. And as I explore this, I shall introduce you to a character, John the White Man Van of Uxbridge. Some of you will get that in a moment. I will make it more transparent to the rest. Okay, so we'll come to John's predicament, a tough one. Okay. Can't hear. Thank you for saying. Is there a problem? Am I not good at one?
Should be on there.
Should be on. I'll use this then. Is that better at the back? Thank you for mentioning it. Is that better? Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah. Thank you. Right. Okay. Capabilities meets practices. David does talk about practices in his work, and he particularly talks about signature practices, those which give individual firms competitive advantage over time. I take a slightly different view on practices. I shall emphasize the ordinary practices which suffuse organizations and which suffuse society and are potentially obstacles to that dynamic transformation that David talks about. So I'm the other side of the coin. And when I talk about the ordinary, I will draw upon practice theory exemplified by someone like Michel de Certeau, who talks about everyday life and how, in this particular case, French people manage their housing, their transport, their local shops, their ordinary byways and throughways of life to get on, to just about manage. Yeah. So it's those that I shall emphasize, and those represent the challenge. They are everyday norms, often taken for granted, and two words I shall come back to: entangled and embedded. I use entangled, not entwined. Entwined is like plaits. You entwine the hair in a neat plait, a pretty plait. Entangled is like the balls of string which exist in my garage. Very hard to unwind. Okay? And so that's what I want to talk about. And David too has talked about embeddedness. Here, just some key themes in practice theory. This is somewhat arbitrary, I admit. But there's some themes I'll talk about. The micro, that Michel Foucault has talked about, and much more. The agency of the little man, that is the small person. The tactical everyday agency of the little person. Pierre Bourdieu, he doesn't use exactly this phrase, but I will talk about the embeddedness in society. Anthony Giddens, structural reproduction. How unconsciously we reproduce the structures in which we live, just through everyday action, and how hard it is to step out of that. Elizabeth Chove will talk about the materiality of practices. She writes about showers, washing machines, cars, and how they are embedded in our lives and entangle everything. And because they're material, difficult to shift. Though she has more nuances than that. And then Theodore Shatsky will also talk about the bundles of practices which are entangled together. What I want to do with practice theory is emphasize this. Things are embedded, things are entangled, and things are sticky. Some people will recognize the top building. People recognize the building at the bottom, perhaps. Part of the University of Oxford, where I come from, Magdalen College to be precise. Does anyone recognize the third building on the right, on the side? Anyone going to hazard a guess? Yeah, I can't. Well, it's very interesting you say it's a church, because I think that's very significant for my argument. It's not a mosque. It's the school to which our Prime Minister went. No, that was the one before last. It's hard to keep up, I know. And we don't know how long Rishi will be there either, but that's Winchester College. Now, what I want to show with these three photographs is, well, what's striking about them? They look like churches. They're all old, or they pretend to be old, like the Houses of Parliament, which are 19th century buildings. They all look a bit the same. Winchester College, Rishi's school, is 650 years old. Magdalen College, well, the university is 800 years old. Magdalen College is 500 or 600 years old. And the Houses of Parliament, well, who knows when they started. But all old, and they're embedded in our societies. They're deeply entangled together. So it's not an accident that Rishi goes from Winchester to Oxford. Winchester is one of the top private schools of the UK, like Eton. And then into the Houses of Parliament. He must have felt very much at home there. He has spent his life, although he's Hindu, in fact, in buildings which imitate Christian churches from way back. All our political leadership, almost all, have gone through these institutions, kinds of institutions. Boris Johnson, Keir Starmer went to Oxford for a master's degree, and then to Parliament, of course. So what I want to show is these things are stuck around for a long time, and they're the center of our society. And the practices which they support materially are enduring and embedded. So a little bit of history to illustrate this embeddedness, the stickiness of practices. Way back in the 19th century, the UK was worried. France and Germany were catching up. The GDP per head advantage that the UK started with was eroding. The United States even overtook. So the British Parliament, that building you saw, commissioned a report, the Samuelson Commission, to work out what was wrong. Samuelson reported. You can see very familiar words here. Our leaders do not understand scientific culture. They're not educated. They are. It goes back to the financialization theme that David raised. Short term, this was 140 years ago. We will not get the highest position as an industrial nation, or we will not retain it, unless we transform the scientific culture of the United Kingdom. Well, that could have been written, and pretty much was, last year. 140 years later, the same issues. National incapabilities, the UK's incapabilities, is sticky. So Julia Brown, Baroness Brown of Cambridge, scientific academic herself, wrote in the Science and Technology Committee to the then Minister of State, the issue of UK skill gap is long running. The shortage of people, 140 years to be precise, long running. STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics skills are lacking. Now, you remember that Samuelson talked about our industrial position. The jargon of today is laughably, perhaps, the UK being a science superpower. But it basically is Samuelson revisited 140 years later. In other words, capabilities are sticky. Now, this has implications for how we create more dynamism in the UK or any other economy. It also has implications for sustainability, transforming towards a more sustainable economy. I'm going to borrow David's framework, sensing, seizing, and transforming. It's a great model. It does suggest prescriptions for the UK. It does mean we will have to disembed. It does mean we'll have to disentangle, but we can do that through sensing, seizing, and transforming. So improving national capabilities, 21st century view, not Samuelson's in Victorian era, seems to me to be both practices that boost inclusion rather than elitism. No longer just Eton, Winchester College, Westminster School, St. Paul's School, my old school, producing a large disproportionate amount of the leadership. Okay, we need more diversity, and I will argue bottom-up strategizing. Why? Because the bottom is exposed to all sorts of ideas, what's actually happening on the ground across the country, across markets, across the world. The top is isolated and insular. It needs to be diverse because with each different genders, different ethnicities, different cultural backgrounds, we are exposed to more ideas. We are more able to sense the new and the different, the opportunities. To seize, we need to favor innovation rather than inertia, and geez, the United Kingdom has plenty of inertia. I'm going to argue comfortably on one hand for creativity education, not simply STEM. If I was to go back to what David talks about, our competitive advantage may not be in science and technology. It may never be that. It may lie in the creative arts, the media, culture. That may be an area to develop as much as STEM. That's not our comparative advantage. And 140 years trying might have taught us something. And of course, flexible regulation, which is an issue with which David started as well. I feel more cautious and guarded about the flexible regulation. I am anxious about the regulatory environment, but education for creativity. And transforming practices that foster confidence in change means, I believe, obviously, maybe, creating a highly skilled workforce, but those skills must be transferable. So workers, managers feel confident about change because they have a place in change. And ditto, a safety net which will rescue those and keep life comfortable for those who are going to be victims of change, and there will be victims. And that brings me closely to the subject of John. How am I doing for time? Oh, right, super, thank you. Okay, that sensing, seizing, and transforming, that framework, I think, helps set an agenda for improving the national dynamic capabilities of the United Kingdom. I'm not sure that Samuelson and the House of Lords Committee have got it entirely right. I think it goes beyond science and technology. Science and technology, an important part. I am aware that Sprue lives about 3 floors above me. That's what I would be arguing there. I come to John, the white man van, from Uxbridge. Those of you, that small proportion of you who follow British politics closely, may recall by-elections about 6 weeks ago, when Labour did really well in Selby, the Liberals did very well in Somerton, and the Conservatives did badly in both. One by-election victory they did have, a narrow one, was in Boris Johnson's old seat, Uxbridge. Uxbridge, as some of you will have followed last week, is part of the new ULEZ ultra-low emission zone, which will charge drivers of old, polluting internal combustion engine cars and vans a levy of, I think, £12.50 per day, which is quite a lot of money if you drive a white van as a gas boiler repairman or whatever, painter, decorator around London. That's a lot of money. And so, in Uxbridge, 6 weeks ago, the Tories held on by campaigning against the extension of ULEZ to Uxbridge. And some of you will know that a lot of the campaign has continued with the vandalization of cameras and things. The Uxbridge by-election was known as the Drivers' Revolt. The small tradesman or woman fearing large charges upon them to help create a more sustainable, a more livable London. And this brings me back to Michel de Certeau and the agency of the little man in this case. He voted, and his family, against ULEZ. And the Tories saved the seat. We need to understand why. And this is really important because sustainability, the sustainability agenda faces deeply embedded and entangled practices, just like those which connect the Houses of Parliament, Oxford University, and Winchester College. John's worried. He doesn't earn a lot of money. Life is hard. His van is old. But he needs it to carry his equipment around Uxbridge and the adjacent suburbs of London. He needs it for his children. He needs it sometimes for shopping. His wife works at Heathrow Airport, just next door, which is full of rather polluting airplanes. He's anxious about all this campaign against gas boilers. You know, what does he know about heat pumps? Nothing. What's next? Is he going to have to find 45 grand for an electric van? Where is he going to charge it? He doesn't have a place to charge a van like some of the more comfortably off residents of Uxbridge would. Okay? For him, his life is complicated. It's marginal and precarious. Sustainability as an agenda goes deep into that thicket of deeply entangled practices, ways in which he lives his ordinary life. So for him, we should be fine. Sustainability is very challenging. And we have to recognize that. Just to take John, the white man van. John is going to need a very generous scrappage scheme if he's going to replace his van. He's going to need charging points everywhere. They don't exist everywhere in Uxbridge yet. He'd like his kids, yeah, sure, it'd be wonderful if they could cycle to school, but the roads are dangerous, as well as polluted by vans like his. His wife has got to get to Heathrow Airport. Well, wouldn't it be nice if she didn't have to use the family car? But the hours are antisocial. How's she going to get to the airport or not? And anyway, is the airport going to exist in the same way in 10 years' time? When his son and daughter might want to work there. It's a major employer next to Uxbridge. And where's he going to get the time and the money to learn how to do heat pumps? Yeah? His life, this is just a fragment of his life, a simplification of his life. But what we have to understand as we promote sustainability, as we should, is how it affects people, the little man, the little person, the little woman, in very many complicated, hard to disentangle ways. So my argument is this: a practice view on building a sustainable future, or indeed transforming the United Kingdom, has to address the complexity, the entangledness, the embeddedness, the stickiness of ordinary everyday practices. Practices in society, British society, practices in Uxbridge. So to do this is no small thing. You have to go broad. Those institutions which all spookily resemble themselves. Parliament, Oxford University, elite schools in the United Kingdom. They're deeply connected and hard to disentangle. To change, we need to cut deep and go broad. Again, to take the systems perspective that David represented, everything is connected. And that makes the disconnection really challenging. We will need to be patient. If it took 140 years for the House of Lords Committee to come back to the problem that Samuelson had identified in 1880, it's going to take a long time to move towards sustainability. 2030 is ominously close. And as we do that, we're going to have to remember John, or here's a metaphor, of course, or a symbol. John and the equivalents who are frightened, whose life is hard and complicated enough already. We need to understand, go back to the Foucault Micro Association, what it means all at the micro level for individuals in their communities, on the ground, trying to get by in everyday life. Not easy now, very likely harder in the future. So with that, building a sustainable future, a practice view, I think the dynamic capabilities perspective gives us the head side of the coin. I'm afraid I'm offering you the tail side. It's going to be tough, it's going to be slow, and there I'll stop.
Yep. Okay. Indeed, very thought-provoking. And I don't know, you say, Richard, that you bring in a negative view, but I think you started with a positive as well, providing that we do have, in a way, the background, and we have knowledge. But I would like to see what our audience think. So if you have any questions, yes?
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure. I'd like to give some positive to this. 5 years ago, the Northwest struggled for growth. Edge Hill University had zero involvement with business support. We adopted and developed a centre for SMEs, productivity and innovation using the dynamic capabilities. We have contributed in the last 4.5 years, £34 million to the local economy. We've transformed policy within the region, both in Lancashire and Liverpool City region, for scaling businesses, It's generated this concept. We've taken the theory, we've applied it, and we have empirical data that demonstrates how dynamic capabilities can transform particular SMEs. It's, I reiterate, 34,530 jobs in 4.5 years from a university that's very famous for women's rights, but not for business development. So all I can say is I can reinforce both of the speakers' content issues. Firstly, dynamic capabilities is a strategy that can be applied, and it can be applied to local and regional policy. So thank you, David.
Well, in a sense, following up to this is Chris Pitelis. What you said is totally complementary, in the sense that in a situation where you have inertia and problems aligned with the behavioral theory of the firm, so to speak, and wider behavioral issues, you need slack in order to address these issues. Slack is created by identifying and seizing opportunities to create wealth, which then you redistribute to the drivers and plumbers of this world, and they are less worried about all of these problems. So what you are saying, in a sense, is part of the same coin, as you correctly said. My problem is different. Both of these things are obsessed with growth, growth, growth. And growth is not sustainability. Growth is killing resources. The question is how to create the institutions, the processes, the structures that support innovation, but it is innovation geared towards sustainability. And we don't do this at the moment.
Well, I'll make some general points here. Definitely, there's a complementarity between what Richard and I am saying. And indeed, transformation, you're quite right, Richard, is very, very difficult. And it involves leadership, both in the public and the private sector. And so I was really delighted, though, to learn that there are hopefully more than isolated pockets where transformation is occurring, where rebirth is happening. As to the question about slack, ideally, yes, you'd like slack, but frequently it's the case, it's the absence of slack that causes an emergency and a crisis. And, you've heard the old story, don't waste a good crisis. And that's sometimes a time that you can get people to turn. The problem is here, we're talking about a societal issue, not just managerial issues. And what you really need to build to bring about societal change and societal dynamic capabilities and governmental dynamic capabilities is sort of some common understanding of the predicament and the necessary direction of change. And that's what takes leadership. And once you get that in place, you can move an electorate, I believe. And in the past, leaders have moved electorates. And managers have moved enterprises. If you have a culture, of course, we haven't mentioned corporate culture, but if you have a culture of innovation, entrepreneurship inside a company, then it's easy to get people to turn on a dime. If you don't, then you can't. So there's a lot of forward thinking that managers always need to do to keep an organization agile. But it's not just about agility. You also need strategy, and that's where dynamic capabilities comes in. There's a very large organizational behavior literature about the importance of agility, and agility matters. But to do what? What am I being agile? Which way do I move? What choices do I make? How do I sense the environment? What's the sense I make of the data I'm receiving? And so the seizing part, which is, requires often a fairly quick response, requires you to get the diagnosis of the situation correct. And, Richard Rumelt's book, Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, is very much about that diagnosis side of strategy. That's what sensing is about. So, I think what you see here is indeed, as Richard put it, there's two sides of the coin here. But I think the people in this room are the ones that can help us. You folks are the ones listening from abroad are the ones that can actually help bring about the necessary transformation. The more people that understand it, the more people that can help communicate and lead, then the better off, the better chances you have.
Richard? Would you like to also?
Thank you very much for the fantastic presentations and talks. This is Elizabeth Wang from University of Leeds. My question is, sensing, seizing, and transforming almost require a will. The will in individual is easy to identify and can be developed. How do we develop the will at the nation level for the benefit of sustainable development? I wonder if you have any analysis and insights perhaps to share. Thank you.
I'll comment on that a little bit. You know, at the societal level and the organizational level, I mentioned leadership, but I do want to say something that's really important here and that people don't understand, and us as management scholars need to get this across. Too often people think that business is about making money and that's, you know, really what motivates founding entrepreneurs. You know, that's maybe 10% of it. Most of the time, you know, it's about having impact. And one thing I've come to learn is if you start off trying to make money and you run your company that way, you often don't succeed. If you start off trying to actually solve a real problem that customers have, and you've got a smart business model, and you're trying to have impact and so forth, then you will succeed. So, you know, profitability is a byproduct of a mission. So the way you motivate is to have a mission and to get people to believe in that mission, to own that mission, and then, you know, asking them to do what's necessary to build is a lot easier if there's alignment there. So, you know, it's all about culture, it's about missions, about strategy. All these things are very interconnected, which of course what systems thinking tells us all the time. But I think that there are certainly many cases of great companies being built, people being highly motivated, and it's really the mission, not the money.
We have time for one more.
To that, David, I think you asked where the will came from, and I think the will must come from when we're called COVID, and when we're all in it together, it needs a society or an organization or to feel cohesive, in which there's commonality, and that's what's going to be important. So attentive to everybody in the organization, all stakeholders as far as possible, bring along the white man van as well as the leadership.
It's more of a comment than a question. I think the bit that's missing so far in the conversation, which I'm sure is there in the literature, is we've got the economic kind of foundations of dynamic capabilities, its origins from the RBV, resource-based view. Then we've got, quite rightly, the sociological kind of underside of that. The bit that's missing in the middle is psychology and how you galvanize collective action and how you develop collective willpower as well as individual willpower, and how you harness people to change has been touched on several times by both speakers. It's all to do with not just cognition, but emotion, and how we learn to regulate our emotions and our goals for the greater good of society. Richard mentioned several times fear with different actors. I think some of the people who hold the purse strings, the power strings, are as fearful as John the White Van Man. And they have to relinquish some of their power, and they have to invest trust in people from other walks of life. So we need a lot more psychology in this conversation and in the development of this body of work, which is really terrific work, by the way. Thanks.
I agree. We've actually had some conversations on this, and one of the benefits of the framework is that it is general enough. And you're right. I started off thinking about cognitive psychology, but the whole emotional side is very important for motivation and for getting action. And quite frankly, that is an area that I'm hoping to do joint research on with some people in this room. I just want to say yes. And there's many other things that can easily fit into this framework, and hopefully you can find dynamic capabilities, this umbrella that enables you to tuck things in and still have some coherence to the overall approach to a problem.
Well, thank you all very much. I'm sorry, I will have to cut it short because I know that we have a continuation. I would like to thank you very much for this provocative but thought-provoking and I don't know, I find a positive spin in all this, and I know that with more discussion and we open the floor, and once we continue this discussion, eventually, I don't know, I'm an optimistic person, we will find our way through. So let us thank both David and Richard. Thank you.
I'd ask you all to stay with us, please. This is a really important part of what the British Academy of Management does, which is to celebrate the people who've contributed to make this organization what it is, and to lay on the capabilities, the events, the community, foster the community that you are all part of. So if you could please remain seated while we show our respect and our appreciation for the awards that we are now about to give. Okay, so it's a real pleasure for myself and Emma to present these, but we're going to start off by welcoming our new fellows, and we welcome our Dean of the Fellows College, Sue Vinicum, to the stage to present the fellows. So if the new fellows would like to come to the front.
So let me just say a few words about fellowship. We award fellowship in BAM to recognize academics who've had a strong international profile of high quality research and who've also, very importantly, made a significant contribution to the well-being of BAM. Following, I should add, a process of nomination, great scrutiny, and then election by the entire College of Fellows. So fellowship is not just a recognition of excellence, just to let you all know, new fellows. It's an invitation to contribute further to the work of BAM by promoting the highest caliber of UK research in management and business on a global stage, progressing research-led teaching and ensuring the highest standards in all areas of management and education. And over to Katie, who I think is going to announce the names.
We're just having a bit of fun with microphones here. It's past the parcel. I'm now wired. Thank you very much. Okay, so our first new fellow is Professor Carol Atkinson. Sue, would you like to have your photograph taken with Carol?
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you. We'd like to also congratulate Ashley Baganza, please.
Thank you.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you.
And Graham Curry. Get green lanyard.
Oh, yes, go John.
Natasha Martner. Fantastic. Lovely to see you.
Ready, Thanos? Thanos Papadopoulos. No, you know why I hesitate. Many congratulations. And Ruth Healy. Sorry.
Okay, Alison Holland.
Many congratulations. So fantastic. Thank you to all our fellows. So our next award is the Companionship of BAM. So Companionship of the British Academy of Management is made by invitation to people who've made an outstanding contribution to our community, but quite often from the policy or sometimes practice world. So they're not generally academics. And so we're absolutely delighted today to award Richard Spencer of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. I did remember it. And he's done amazing work on sustainability and LGBT+ support for accountants across England and Wales. So we heartily welcome him to our community and big congratulations. Okay. Joe. Can I see Joe? Don't see Joe. Okay, so we had an award in 2020, which was in the pandemic, and we were hoping that Joe could be here today to give him the award. Joe has been a really important member of the Irish Academy of Management, has been absolutely fundamental in helping us foster a relationship, and he continues to be a great supporter of BAM. So many congratulations to Joe for being becoming a companion and being a member of our community. So one of the things that we've done for many years at BAM is to offer the Richard Whip Lifetime Achievement Award, which is made annually in memory of Professor Richard Whip. Richard Whip was an outstanding scholar and a former chair of the British Academy of Management. This prestigious award acknowledges the contribution to our field and our learned community over an entire career. I don't want to put too much of a full stop on that because I think our awardees today have more to contribute. But the recipients of this award have contributed both through their field of study and have had a major impact both nationally and internationally. And it's a real pleasure to welcome Anne, Richard's wife, onto the stage to make this award today. Okay, so Rick Delbridge, it's a real pleasure to welcome you to have this award. So Rick is given this award for his field-leading work in innovation and organizational learning and for his contribution to the BAM community, where he's led many things for us, and also to ESRC, where he's also done great service. So fantastic. Thank you very much. Great. Thank you. So perhaps a little unusually this year, we have 2 awardees in this category, and our second awardee is our own Nick Beach. So Nick, welcome. So today we celebrate with Nick more than 20 years service and dedication to our academy. His impact has been significant nationally and internationally. Nick's contributions include establishing the Identity Special Interest Group. So any identity SIGers, stick your hands up. Yay. He's also took over the leadership of BAM at a really challenging time, and he's helped us manage our organization to really go through a change leadership process, giving more energy and inspiration to us all. Another thing that Nick has also done is it was his idea to introduce the MKE, Management, Knowledge and Education Initiative, which has really helped us expand our community. So we're really delighted to recognize this today, and many other things that we can't list, but thank you very much, Nick. Wonderful. Okay, family photos here. So we just want Nick to stay with us a little moment longer. So we now go on to the medals part of our presentation. And the medals were introduced about a few years ago. I think it was our 30th celebration. We were at Warwick University for that. And the idea of the medals was to celebrate excellence in different areas of academic life. It's really important to understand the medal process. So people on council, leaders of SIGs and the executive can nominate people for these awards. They go to an awards committee and then they're scrutinized by the awards committee, and then recommendations are made to the executive, and then the executive approve the awards. So there's quite a rigorous process. But by the nature of the process, we don't allow anybody on the executive or in the senior leadership of BAM to receive awards. So despite or because of his contribution, Nick has been excluded from all these awards for many years. Now, I know many of you here will have been at Manchester last year, where Nick stood down as president. It was his last conference after a long service on the leadership of BAM, and he actually received a standing ovation, which was absolutely amazing. But we couldn't recognize it in any other way other than showing warmth to him. So it's absolutely fantastic. Nick is the first person ever to get 3 awards from different nominees, which shows how amazing his contribution has been. There are 2 more medals, the Cooper Medal for Outstanding Leadership and Contribution, and a brand new medal introduced in Nick's honor on equality, diversity, inclusivity, and respect, which is at the center of what it is that we're trying to do here. We are trying to build a community that celebrates plurality, and from that plurality brings us excellence. So Nick, may I present you with the Cooper Medal, named after our founding president, Kerry Cooper. I know you were instrumental in setting this up, so it's absolutely fantastic to make that award to you today. Get the fire extinguisher in. And the second medal, I just wanted to say a bit about the EDIR. I mean, it didn't escape your notice, I'm sure, and it didn't escape our notice as a committee, that we're giving the first medal for equality, diversity, inclusivity, and respect to a white male who is generally considered to be the most privileged in our community. They have more opportunities, the world is structured around them for lots of historical reasons. We are changing, we are working at it, we are untangling practices, and it takes a long time. This man has done more than anybody I know to make that happen. We can look around our community today, we can think about the different backgrounds we come from, the different ways we choose to perform our life and engage as academics. Every single form of diversity you can imagine, this man has had his eye on the ball, both in the universities that he's led, in the business and management schools that he's led, but so importantly for us in the revival of BAM that so nearly suffered collapse at a certain point in time when finances were not good. This man took it on. This man put equality and diversity at the center of everything that we do. And it's because of him that we are here today. So it's a real pleasure to give you this, Nick. And thank you so much for what you've done for our community. Fantastic. Okay. Thank you, Nick. Would you like to say a few words? It seems unfair not to let you respond. There you are.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you, Emma, and thank you, everybody, and particularly to Madeline. I'm really humbled, trying not to cry. For those of you who've been watching the photos, you'll notice that I now have more medals than I actually have suits. BAM is a just outstanding community, as Katie has said, a diverse community that is here to change the world. And it has really led the way in a few key important facets. One is interdisciplinarity. I think BAM was pushing on this far before many places were. And people here were doing the really difficult thing of both having a home in their special interest group and stepping outside their home to engage in conversations that were sometimes a bit scary and a bit different and challenge their own thinking. And it has been wonderful to see that interdisciplinarity fostered here. Secondly, impact and really engaged research in the BAM journals and in the BAM practice, way before it became part of REF in the UK, way before it got onto the agenda internationally. Doing research that made a difference was always a key part of BAM. And again, it was done in a dialogical way so that we changed as a result of our engagement with practice and with other forms of policymaking. And lastly, internationalism. Although we're the British Academy, actually our whole aspect has been to have low boundaries, to have porous boundaries, to go out and for people to come in. And we've got fantastic collaborations around the world now that have really grown over the last decade and really benefit people. And I'm really, really proud that now for our joint grants overseas, EDI has been at the heart of many of those aspects. Along with Sue and others, we've done it on the gender group. We've done a huge amount of work with British industry, and that is now being replicated other parts of the world. So for me, it's all about a diverse community because that's how we get to excellence and that's how we change ourselves and change our society. And so EDI is everything of those three I's. But I'm so happy that another generation is taking this on and moving it towards sustainability and environment, the things that really matter in changing the world. So thank you all to you. Keep being BAM, keep being the community.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you so much, Nick. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to hand over now to Emma for the next award.
Okay, thank you, Katie, and congratulations, Nick, and all of our award winners so far. So it's my job just to give out the rest of the medals because we do have a number of medals for different aspects. And the next medal is the BAM Medal for Leadership. So the BAM Medal for Leadership is awarded for sustained and outstanding leadership of and contribution to the academic community by a BAM member. And this year we're awarding this medal to Dr. Stuart Johnson. So Stuart has been awarded this.
Wonderful to see.
So Stuart has been awarded this for his work in developing and broadening the HRM SIG, something that's very close to my heart, and also for his contribution to the field of HRM more broadly. Congratulations, Stuart.
Thank you.
Moving on to the BAM Medal for Research. This is awarded for sustained original contributions to management research by a British Academy of Management member. And this year we have two recipients. So firstly, not Stuart, firstly Emanuela for her leading work in the field of international business. Congratulations. And our second recipient of the BAM Medal for Research is Alison, for her outstanding contribution to the field of gender studies. Congratulations again. And then our final medal for today is the BAM Medal for Management Practice. So this medal is awarded for outstanding contribution to management practice beyond the normal expectations of the job over a sustained period by a leading practitioner. And today's awardee is awarded this for her outstanding contribution to management policy and practice, particularly, and again, close to BAM's values here in driving equality within the National Health Centre. And that's Dame Jane Dacre. Thank you. Congratulations, Jane. Yeah. So I'm now going to pass on to our Vice Chairs for Management Knowledge and Education, who are going to present our Teaching Practice Awards, Kate and Ashley.
Katie. Thank you. As ever, it's our pleasure to announce the winners of a BAM Education Practice Award. This competition started back in 2016 and is designed to recognise both individual and/or team initiatives that enhance management learning and education. It's an annual open competition which reflects the value we place on excellence in education practice and calls for accounts of inspiring and really sort of truly impactful management education practice that are informed by reflection of context and theories of learning and pedagogical development. We're keen to support the sharing of that practice amongst our BAM community and to create a critical mass of what is significant and really imaginative practice. Important to say that these entries are judged by a panel of deans and overseen by the committee that Kate and I look after. And we really want to take this moment just to thank all of their work and effort in getting the winners to the point where we can announce them. There's two different awards, two different categories. There's an experienced and an early career practitioner category. And I'll hand over to Kate now, who will be announcing the winners of these different areas.
Thanks, Ashley. So I'm delighted to announce that the experienced practitioner category, we had two entries that were highly commended by the judges. The first of these is Dr. Patrick McGurk and Shi Zhou. And the second was Erica Cargills, who's been collected by a colleague, I understand. Thank you. And our early career category, Martin Bradley's entry was highly commended by the judges. Do we have Martin? No. But the winner of the early career category for the British Academy of Management's Education Practice Award is Tim Doan for his project entitled Diversity Champion Poster and Postcard Competition.
Fantastic, thank you. Well done, many congratulations.
And just finally to say that the competition opens again in 2024, so please do send in your applications.
Thank you, Kate and Ashley, and congratulations. And last but very definitely not least, our Best Reviewer Awards. As you all know, we have two journals, and these journals could not function without people that kindly volunteer to review submissions carefully and thoughtfully, using their expertise and experience to provide constructive feedback and help to develop the papers into better products that we can publish. This work of reviewing underpins BAM's work around developing excellence in scholarship through research. So with support from our publishing partner, Wiley, we established these Best Reviewer Awards. So we'd like to thank Wiley for their support in this and also for supplying the prize. So the winners are chosen each year by the editor-in-chief teams. Unfortunately, neither of our winners can be with us today, but it is my job, thankfully, to announce them. So the winners of our Best Review Awards during 2022 are Professor Yiling Zhang for British Journal of Management, and then Professor Frederick Dahlman for IJMR. And I'm just going to pass back to Katie.
Yes, I just heard it. Sadly, we lost 3 really important members of our community this year. These people were fundamental to what the British Academy of Management has become. Robin was my examiner. Jeff brought me to Lancaster, where I had a fantastic career. They've been a really important part of our Fellows College. John Burgoyne was my colleague at Lancaster for many years and was fundamental to management learning. I know their families have been very supportive of celebrating the lives of our dear friends, part of our community that have been here with us through so many years and shaped so much of what we have become. So thank you for remembering them with us. And as David Teece says, go and create some magic and have a fantastic conference in their name. Thank you.